Administrator.
I'm sorry. It didn't.
That's all right.
Can you start over?
I can start. Good morning. My name's Ed Hamrick, and I'm an Assistant Attorney General, and I represent the State Board of Land Commissioners. And this morning, the board has been in executive session to have an attorney-client discussion regarding the Administrative Procedures Act and the Open Meetings Law and the requirements under those laws. They answer legal questions related to that. The discussion was limited to attorney-client communication, and no decisions were reached in executive session. The board has come out of executive session and is about to proceed with the rest of its meeting agenda, but is on break for a couple of minutes to allow everyone to get settled. And then we'll proceed with the rest of its agenda in 2 to 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
So we're back live. We're ready when you are.
Okay, well, we're reconvening the meeting after our executive session, and I would like to welcome. Well, I guess I'm going to turn over to Director Rose Marino before welcoming Ray.
Yes, thank you, Chair Fro. For the record, this is Nicole Rosemarino, Director of State Land Board. I have a couple of announcements. The first is that the staff has come up with a 2026 schedule of board tours and wanted to mention those. This will be in writing in your March packet. But in April, we will be going to Lamar to visit a lesser prairie chicken lek and then have the business meeting in Lamar. In June, we will be visiting Sherman Creek Ranch near Walden. In July, we will be going to the North Mountain Ranch, Norwood, Montrose, or Ouray area. And then in September, we'll be going to the Lake Fork Ranch, just outside of Leadville. And as you recall, you approved the acquisition of that. And so just to highlight in April, one of the reasons for the design of that tour is that we will be considering the revised stewardship action plan for the lesser prairie chicken. The rationale for going to Lake Fork Ranch is so you can see it in person. That acquisition was really targeting some layered leasing with the ecosystem services and recreation lines of business in particular. And I wanted to ask Assistant Director Elliot Hoyt to describe more why Sherman Creek Ranch and North Mountain Ranch rose to the top.
Yeah, thank you. Elliot Hoyt, Assistant Director. So Sherman Creek Ranch is a large ranch in the Northwest District. Very important ranch to us. Wonderful sort of eco region there that'll be interesting, I think, for everybody to see. And it's coming up for an RFP. And that's actually one of the reasons we're not doing a tour in August is because we'll be having folks who submit proposals do tours of the ranch, and the staff will be very busy and doing that process, which you've all seen on some of our other properties like Chico Basin Ranch and Chancellor and so forth. So Sherman Creek's going to go through that, and we'd like you to see the property, obviously, and we'll give you briefings on its values and its importance. North Mountain Ranch, another wonderful property in the Southwest District, was acquired a number of years ago. It's an interesting property because it has a strong recreation component, and actually the board and the lessee partnered together to build a building to help with the outfitting on it. And it's just an interesting example of how we invest together with lessees on important properties and create opportunities for additional revenue generation. So happy to show you that. And then we're building all these tours to see what else we can see, but we sort of wanted to highlight a couple of reasons why we picked each of these for you.
Exciting.
Yes. Any questions?
But I'm going to do that after that.
And that was July was the Ouray area.
Yes. I have one more announcement unless there are any other questions on the board tours. All right, well, I am very excited to announce Dr. James Vickers is our new Renewable Energy Program Manager. we're really appreciative of him coming on board. He started on February 9th and has hit the ground running. And I also wanted to thank David Rodenberg for leading the charge on renewables up till now. He will be working closely with James as he hands over the baton. So thank you, David, and welcome, James.
Welcome, we're glad to have you.
Everybody.
Okay, that's it, great. And as Aaron Ray is making his way up for the DNR exec report, I'd like to open the open up to the public for any non-agenda comments.
Yeah, folks listening along online or in the room, if you're here to make a comment about an item that is not part of our posted agenda for the day, now is the time to do that. Please use the raise hand feature on Zoom or raise your hand here in the room. That rhymes nicely. And we'll bring you forward so that you can make your comments to the board. And looks like no hands raised at this time.
Ready then. Thank you. Welcome, Aaron.
Morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Aaron Ray. I serve as Director of Policy in the Executive Director's Office at the Colorado Department of Natural Resources. It's good to be with you again this morning to provide an update on behalf of Executive Director Dan Gibbs. I want to start with DNR staffing updates. As was announced on Monday, Colorado Park and Wildlife Commission and Executive Director Gibbs have chosen Laura Clellan as the sole finalist for the position of CPW Director. Per statute, the public notice of the sole finalist needs to be posted for 14 days. And the CPW Commission will hold a special virtual public meeting on Monday, February 23rd to consider the appointment of the director. Comments to the commission can be submitted on the commission's Engage page if people have comments on that position. Laura has been serving as Colorado Parks and Wildlife Acting Director since December of last year. She was previously the Chief for Leadership and Employment Development at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and federal government. And she served as the Adjutant General and Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Military and Veteran Affairs before retiring in October 2025. Moving to budget, the Joint Budget Committee has begun what's called the figure setting process, where the committee makes funding decisions for the upcoming fiscal year, which starts in July 2026. DNR's figure setting is scheduled for February 18th. So if people are interested in DNR's budget, those meetings are open to the public. As you know, the legislative session is off to a vigorous start, and one of DNR's priority bills, the Outdoor Opportunities Act, which is House Bill 26-1008, is scheduled for its first hearing in the House Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources Committee on February 23rd. In addition to working to advance our priority bills, we're also tracking numerous bills that would have potential impacts on DNR. As we've discussed previously, our Director of Legislative Affairs, Daphne Gervais, works closely with State Land Board staff to engage them on any bills that would impact the State Land Board. And Daphne is working with staff to be able to provide regular updates to you about legislative matters over the course of the session. Moving to federal updates, the U.S. Forest Service is releasing a revised draft assessment for the Cimarron and Comanche National Grasslands Land Management Plan revision this week. There is no formal public comment period for that revised draft, but the Forest Service is accepting comments if folks have them. They're also accepting feedback from stakeholders about changes from the 1984 land management plan for that same grasslands. Those comments can be accepted in writing. There's a virtual webinar that the U.S. Forest Service is holding on February 17th and an in-person workshop in March in La Junta if people are interested. And more details about that plan are on the Forest Service's website. Also, at the federal level, the EPA has proposed an update to the Clean Water Act 401 Water Quality Certification Program that's administered in Colorado by the Department of Public Health and Environment. And DNR is assessing the proposed changes for any possible comments, which are due on February 17th. Congressional offices are gathering requests for the Water Resources Development Act, or WRDA bill. That is the first step in authorizing projects for funding through the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And DNR is evaluating potential changes to WRDA that could facilitate funding for projects in Colorado. We are also working with our congressional delegation on a request for what's called congressionally directed spending, also known as earmarks. That is never guaranteed, but the department's evaluating potential projects that could be included in any congressional spending package. I will stop there before I move on to state matters. Any questions about federal or legislative or budget stuff?
No.
Okay. Moving to water, on January 30th, Governor Polis was part of a meeting at the U.S. Department of the Interior with Secretary Doug Burgum and fellow governors from the Colorado River Basin states. The Department of Interior has set a deadline of February 14th for the Colorado River Basin states to submit a state consensus position to be included in the environmental impact statement for the Bureau of Reclamation's post-2026 operational guidelines and strategies for Lake Powell and Lake Mead. Colorado continues to engage with our fellow states ahead of that deadline. Sticking with water, as folks are aware, it's been a rough year for our snowpack. As of February 11th, Colorado snowpack was at a record low of 52% of median for this time of year. There is a storm impacting the state this week, which may help a little, but will not catch us up. This year's poor snowpack is attributable both to low precipitation and extremely warm temperatures. And it's likely the upcoming summer will be difficult for agricultural producers, communities, wildlife, and our forests. The Colorado Water Conservation Board has been hosting regular meetings of the Water Conditions Monitoring Committee to keep tabs on snowpack and the implications for our water system. We're hopeful that we'll get more snow. Moving to Colorado Parks and Wildlife, at the January CPW Commission meeting, CPW staff briefed the Commission on Colorado's final wolverine restoration plan, which CPW staff was working on for a couple of years. That plan will support the implementation of Senate Bill 24171, which directed CPW to restore wolverines in the state. It's important to note that reintroduction of wolverines will require the designation of Colorado's wolverine population as a non-essential experimental population through a federal 10J rulemaking process. Wolverines are currently listed as a federally protected threatened species under the Endangered Species Act, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is responsible for issuing that 10J rule. So until that happens, we are in a waiting posture. Moving to energy, as part of the annual high priority habitat rulemaking process at ECMC and CPW hosted a stakeholder meeting on January 20th to review updated high priority habitat maps for oil and gas development. This year's rulemaking focuses on the southeast corner of the state. They update the maps by quadrant each year. And the commission hearing to consider the final updated maps is scheduled for April 8th. Also on energy, another of our priority bills in the legislative session this year would give the state the authority to pursue primacy to regulate underground injection control wells under the Safe Drinking Water Act. Currently, those wells are regulated by the U.S. EPA. So we're asking the legislature for the authority to pursue primacy so that the state can regulate those wells in Colorado. That bill has been introduced. It's House Bill 261112. It has bipartisan sponsorship, and the first hearing is scheduled for February 25th in the House Energy and Environment Committee. And last, in the forest space, Governor Polis issued an executive order in late December addressing the mountain pine beetle outbreak in the Ponderosa pine forest in the Front Range. That executive order created a task force that Executive Director Gibbs is the co-chair of, and he has made appointments to that task force. The task force includes a range of individuals from federal, state, local governments, utilities, nonprofits, philanthropies, and the private sector. And we anticipate the first meeting of that task force to be held in the spring of 2026. And that concludes my prepared remarks. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
What's the coordination between DNR and this board if there's a piece of legislation that we support or disagree with? Is there a strong coordination throughout the state about who says what when?
Yeah, there is. Thanks for the question, Commissioner Harvey. So the way the process works is when DNR becomes aware of legislation that would affect any of our divisions, our Director of Legislative Affairs, Daphne Gervais, reaches out to all of our divisions or the affected divisions and says, hey, there's a bill, you should be aware. Let us know what you think. We have a process to collect feedback from the divisions. Either we should oppose the bill, or we should amend the bill to do something differently, or we should support the bill. That process ultimately goes through the Executive Director's office and the Governor's office. State agency positions on legislation are approved by the Governor. And so ultimately, once we've made a request to the Governor, we would like to support this bill as a department, we get approved or not to do that. And then Daphne is our sort of person on at the state capitol sharing that position. But that works through your director. So staff will get updates. They can share those with you. If you have feedback, please share that with your director, and that gets put through the process of establishing a position.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. That was a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, moving on to business. I'm sure the other commissioners are sad that we don't have any requests for review, so, you know, maybe another meeting.
Carry on.
So let's welcome up Mr. LaFontaine on North Sand Hills. Non-simultaneous.
Good morning, Commissioners. Matt LaFontaine, Real Estate Program Manager. Pleased to be here this morning presenting the North Sand Hills Non-Simultaneous Exchange. And Abe Medina is also in the audience today, our Recreation Program Manager, who's had a lot of personal involvement with this property over time. You'll come to understand hopefully through the presentation why it has been so management intensive of a kind of property for us, and you know why for that reason a disposal is in the best interest of the trust. The staff sees this non-simultaneous exchange as an opportunity for the board to divest of a property that does not fit the state land board's mission, and with little downside risk associated with that decision. Certainly there are unknown, potentially unknown consequences to any decision that's been made, but after looking at this pretty comprehensively, staff has consensus that this is with its recommendation to the board to proceed with disposal. Summarize the North Sand Hills property. It's located adjacent to the State Forest State Park, which you'll see up on this map in Jackson County, on the very east side of Jackson County, a large aggregation of state trust land, the Colorado State Forest. While this subject property is adjacent to and in proximity to the State Forest State Park, it is not a part of the State Forest State Park. And there's a couple of reasons. One, it's held in the school trust purely. Two, it came into the State Land Board's ownership over a couple of different acquisitions, but at separate times than related State Forest State Park lands. Property is approximately 231 acres. Geologically, it's very interesting. It ties into the North Sand Hills of climate, or I should say ecosystem, but that is, as I have found through the research and reading through past board materials, a cold climate, aeolian, semi-active, parabolic sand dune complex. And I had to do a little bit of additional digging to decipher that. But essentially, that means that these are wind-driven dunes. They're U-shaped. They're slowly moving, so they aren't totally static, but a real unique kind of geologic feature in this area of the state. I mentioned that that the subject area that we're talking about disposal of today came into state's ownership separate from the remainder of the state forest, or I shouldn't say the remainder, but the actual state forest, state park lands. It was part of a 400-acre parcel. We're only looking at 231 acres for disposal, but it came into the board's ownership in two exchanges, one with original land grants and one with the 1976 era federal exchange. The Colorado State Forest lands are leased for recreation to CPW, and through that generate a reasonable and consistent income for the state land board. However, the subject area is not leased, and it does not produce any income for the board. The fact that it's unleased doesn't mean it's unutilized, though. In fact, the site has been visited by thousands of recreational visitors who use the property for OHV use, extensive OHV use, and camping. And over the past 4 decades, this has led to a perception that the property is public property. We zoom in on the actual disposal site, which you see here bounded in red. You'll see the extent of the disturbance that's been caused by OHV use over time. Lands to the west and south of the subject area are in BLM ownership. So unfettered public access. They're also used kind of at the same time and in the same manner for OHV uses. And then you'll see really some of the Great Sand Dune here, kind of to the southeast of our site. In 2015, the State Land Board entered into an MOU with BLM and CPW and renewed that in 2022. And that was designed to help with some of these cross-agency management issues. It allowed for signage, fencing on the State Land Board property, and law enforcement functions to be carried out by other agencies. But it didn't resolve the fundamental issue of this being state trust land that didn't produce any income and wasn't necessarily aligned with the State Land Board's mission. Currently, CPW is working toward establishing the North Sand Hills Recreation Area. And this year, they indicated their desire to obtain the property from the board at its appraised value. Hence our action item here today. Our disposal would still be subject to our statutory public notice and bid solicitation requirements. So CPW is not a direct transaction party, but they are the party who has expressed interest, and based on their work with the North Sand Hills Recreation Area and their planning efforts with that would be a likely and favorable transaction partner. So more on the why now. I kind of mentioned the longstanding management issue and CPW's expression of interest. We've started positioning the property for disposal, and CPW has taken concrete steps to start arranging their acquisition of the property. Those include us getting a jointly commissioned appraisal, completing a survey of the property, conducting a phase 1 environmental site assessment, and other actions. If I go back to the map real quick here, I'll just point out we decided that the optimal disposal area was south of this government creek that is here. That's kind of a natural terrain feature that bifurcates the property into a northern part that we believe can be integrated either into other leasing opportunities, an extension of the state forest, state park lease potentially, or a grazing lease or similar, but doesn't have the same extent of disturbance and isn't as accessible as everything to the south. Okay, and then lastly, the property appraised for $752,000. There isn't a lot of recreation, or excuse me, there's not a lot of residential pressure in this area of Jackson County. But we think that the appraisal came in at a reasonable value, given the nature of the property. And we would provide the State Land Board with another $752,000 of non-simultaneous exchange funds to be used to purchase other property that is more aligned with the board's mission.
Madam Chair. So do I understand correctly that CPW is the only known or likely bidder?
They are the only known interested party at this time, yes.
What's the history of the OHV use? Was it all of a sudden, or was it sort of creeping, or?
It was gradual. In the board materials, there was as an exhibit, a past workshop.
Mhm.
And it looks like it's page 9 or so, 160, but it shows the extent of the disturbance that has kind of occurred over
okay.
the decades. There's 4 pictures in here that show nice aerials. But at this point, it's quite pervasive.
Yeah.
It's very intensive use. And it seems to be just continuing in that direction in general.
So this might be a good use of our new technology, our lens technology, to in the future to see this in advance. Then the other question, what's the difference between, or why the decision to sell it to CPW versus leasing it to CPW?
I might ask Abe if he can shed light on past efforts to lease the property. I would say that actually, maybe that would be a good starting point for that question.
Good morning, Commissioners. A Medina, Recreation Program Manager. This property's been a challenge since the 70s, I want to say, and that's about the time when OHV use really started developing with the invention of three-wheelers and just these off-road vehicles. But in the past, we've had discussions with trading this to the BLM. There was resistance at the county to make that trade. From the perception of it going into federal ownership. The BLM is really, the BLM owns the sand dunes, the open sand dunes portion of this property, which is really the main driving force to it. So I want to say through up until about the mid 2000s, we had those conversations about potentially selling this, trading this with the BLM. And then when those didn't really have any legs, we talked about some other third party trades that we could do, another way to get into a different ownership that kind of got us out of owning a highly impacted site. And then in the last 5 years, there's been more discussions, more openness by Jackson County government to trading this to the CPW, to BLM, or to some other agency, because they struggle with law enforcement. The county is very small, has a very low, very small tax base, and doesn't have a lot of emergency services. So in those conversations, we entered into that management agreement, but then just recently, CPW has been looking at expansion, creation of new parks across the state. There's a few of them that have popped up, Trinidad being, I think, the last big one or is it Trinidad? The big state park in Trinidad.
Fisher Peak.
Fisher Peak, thank you, yes. So anyways, as part of that discussion about creating new parks, CPW engaged really closely with the BLM about potentially, instead of purchasing the BLM, looking at a management agreement for the sand dunes under keeping in BLM ownership, but having parks own it. And since this was where most folks camp when they visit the sand dunes, they approached us about potentially purchasing it.
Thanks.
Madam Chair, go ahead, Chris.
Chris.
Yeah, if I could also add to that, I think leasing it, we still have a liability for leasing it. There's Abe's done a great job of adding a vault toilet on site to try to concentrate the usage around it for camping rather than just dispersed. There's always trash bags there. The people who use it will dump their septic tanks as they're driving out across the land. The BLM installed a helicopter pad because of all the injuries that are happening on the sand dunes. And
It's like a nice piece to.
so the game was very diplomatic, but I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
liability if we stayed in ownership.
Okay, thanks.
The
Yes.
Sheriff, I may have acquainted with this property dating back 15 years when I served on the Parks Board. And largely through a grant program the Parks Board operates to do law enforcement on public lands, both state and federal, to do law enforcement. This was characterized even then. This is a very pristine, pretty picture, but this landscape is actually littered with campsites, trash, unregulated target shooting practicing. It is, what is it? Is Jackson County or Jackson County?
Yep.
Sheriff told us 15 years ago, it was literally a no man's land on certain summer weekends in terms of lawless behavior, and thus leading to injuries and accidents and injuries and so on and so forth. So I'm going to be very happy. I assume CPW is fully aware of what it's choosing to take on. That's not a question for you. You don't have to try to answer that, but I do commend Mr. Medina for diplomatically phrasing this as would you call it management challenge?
Yes.
This is very unfortunately a parcel that reflects some very bad behavior by visitors on these public lands. And hopefully CPW can bring some order to it. I recall the sheriff was telling us, I will never send, or I do not send only one patrol vehicle up there for a call. I've got to have multiple vehicles because even our officers are being assaulted. This was 15 years ago and it's only gotten worse. So with that, I'd like to make the motion based on staff present, and if we're ready to.
I think we have to have public comment,
Public
there are no other comments by the commissioners. May we have some public comment on this issue?
Yeah, folks listening along online, raise the hand on the Zoom viewer. If you wanted to comment on this item. No hands raised.
Very much. Then, thank you, Commissioner.
All right,
Pibble.
based on staff presentation, the board determines in the best interest to approve the disposal of the North Sand Hills disposal parcel. Direct staff to commence public notice and bid solicitation process. Minimum bid should be $752,000 based on appraised value. In an event no qualified or that multiple qualified bids are received, board directs staff to bring the matter back to board for determination of the winning bidder.
Thank you. Second? Second, Commissioner Harvey. Commissioner Pribble, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Commissioner Heath? Commissioner Scanlon? Aye. Chair votes yes. This would seem to be a no regrets if there was one.
That's right.
Thank you all. Mindy?
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Mindy Gottsagen. I'm the Stewardship and Ecosystem Services Program Manager, and I'm here again before you this morning once again to talk about the Lens monitoring platform. You may remember last month I presented a workshop item and we had some more of a discussion on the opportunities presented before us. Miles Van Blarkum from Upstream Tech was also online and gave a short presentation as well. He is also online and available for questions today after my presentation. So I don't have him necessarily making a presentation today, but he's available if any questions that I'm unable to answer. So I'm before you today. This is a final action item for the board and an action item request. And that's because I&D fund requests over $50,000 are required to come to the board for approval. So I will say the presentation I'm going to give today is remarkably similar, not exactly the same as what I presented a month ago. So I'll be going through here, but please feel free to stop me at any time if you have questions. This request is really about organizational excellence. And this is a landscape that's part of our Badger Creek property that the board visited a year ago. You can see the various types of ecosystems here. We actually didn't visit this part because it's a little bit hard to access, but you can see the various types of like ecosystem like areas, the wetlands, the upland forested areas. All of these are things that Lens can help us identify and better understand and quantify for the state landlord staff. The organizational like excellence also, the sub goal under that, under our outgoing strategic plan, is to invest in and apply the best technology to support operations and enhance organizational efficiency. And I'll be talking a little bit about that in coming slides. So one of the challenges that staff faces is the lease inspections on our 2.8 million acres of land. We have over 7,700 different leases on our properties and perform over 1,600 lease inspections each year across 6 districts and our 12 lines of business. Those inspections involve largely the ag lease inspections. Those are visited at least once every 5 years. The Stewardship Trust is once every 3 years, and business program managers inspect their business program leases on a varying basis, but as much as every year to every 5 years, or even a little bit more with some uses in perpetuity for rights of way. That doesn't mean there isn't a need necessarily to see certain issues happening on things like rights of way. And so we're really looking forward to having an opportunity to kind of have an extra set of eyes on the ground where we can look at those. Some of the management challenges that staff faces is even if the land is just a 640 or just a small area, it's still challenging for staff to inspect the entire area of leased land, especially for large properties. So even if you're only going once out every 3 years, I'll just speak from experience on Stewardship Trust properties. We don't often visit the same area if we're on foot, just because we have a limited amount of time that's on the property. So this would give us an extra set of eyes on the ground or like in the air. Our practice of layered leases increases the complexity of lease management. And so this is another opportunity for us to kind of better understand our properties. The increased pressure of public access just changes every year with more and more people being interested in accessing state trust lands, either from private lands or from other public lands. And also understanding the newer impacts from a changing climate and extreme weather events. The tool that we'll be looking at gives us an opportunity to better understand that and actually give us metrics and quantified information. So the Lens platform, I will say that the staff has been using GIS for probably 2 decades at least, and there's a lot of information available through that. Using geographic information systems is nothing new to staff. That said, there's a change in technology in terms of the information that's available to us. And staff feels that this particular platform is both wide in scope in terms of the amount of data that's available, and also its ability to be user-friendly and accessible generally to our staff. The Lens platform provided by Upstream Tech involves at current time at least 72 different sources of aerial imagery and geodatabase information. That imagery is as old as 20 years old or more to as recent as 3 days old, depending on, they actually are, I wouldn't say a clearinghouse, but they have access to many different types of information collected and provided by different satellite companies, all at differing kind of elevations above the earth. And so they provide different kind of information like in different areas. We would be able to pull from these different data sources as we need them for our purposes. This would also be usable by multiple lines of business. In fact, I think every line of business that we have could eventually use this. I know with our stewardship team, we're poised, should the board approve the use of this platform, we're poised to really push this technology to its limits in the coming year and really get a handle of what it can do and what it can't. And we plan to report back to you at the end of the year, at the end of the first year. The nice thing about Lens also is that it uses AI-assisted technology. Their dashboard would be customizable to the needs that the state land board needs. And that could be even further customized by different lines of business of the information that we're looking at. And we could use these tools to evaluate land use factors over time. The lookout tool enables us to pre-identify an area and have Lens alert staff to any changes that are happening, like on the ground. And that can be done across time and across regions. We can do that for a broad set of properties in like Southeast Colorado or within a certain county. And it can also be used to help us evaluate how our lands compare to others around it. It allows us to create customizable monitoring reports that can be downloaded and kept as part of our record in terms of monitoring or other information. And we can also use the features. They have a share links feature where we can create kind of like interactive stories or maps or programs we can put on our website for public engagement and storytelling. This was one thing that was brought up in our recent strategic planning analysis. There's an opportunity for us to do kind of a better job telling stories about the work we do. So last month too, but this Miles also went into detail about two potential uses of Lens. It enables staff to investigate and respond to previously undetected changes. The top photograph is a photograph from our Lorimor property in Mesa County that in the last few years, we've had to address significant trespass on that property. And Lens would be a cost-effective way of making sure that we can do more regular monitoring, even if we're not there on the ground, and also alert us to events like this happening on potentially other state trust land properties. The second chart on the slide is an example of how a single property can be evaluated over time and across regions to look at trends that are happening. We may be able to better understand what's happening on drought, for example, or the results of storm impacts on properties of a certain area. The highlights of the program, I'm going to go through a couple of features. So the Lens monitoring platform, the initial cost for the first year is $29,000. We do have a discount the first year, and that would rise to, I think it's $40,000 for the second year. But the staff request is including the total cost for a 2-year period. Part of that annual cost is, in addition to the regular monitoring platform, the estimated cost of additional imagery would be up to about $20,000. That would give us an imagery on about 300,000 acres that we would pre-select if we were alerted to some changes happening on the ground, or for in anticipation of doing it in annual inspection, we could create a customizable report to give us information about that property before we go. If we find something that's concerning to us, we could pre-identify subsections of that property, give us reported to give us like updated reports over time, like over the coming year, to monitor changes. And in some cases, maybe perhaps require us to go back out and take another second look. But it does allow us to see what's happening through the aerial imagery without us actually having to go out. The package that I'm recommending that this board consider is a package involving 20 user seats across our agency that would provide enough of user seats for our district staff and our business program managers. It also includes custom user training sessions and deployment assistance and engineering support to integrate the platform into our Atlas database and GIS system. Are there any questions, about this information?
Do you foresee adding drones to the system? I gather a lot of Lens customers have their secondary drone stuff to add more imagery and stuff like that.
Yeah, and not at this time. We do have several drones that staff use, mostly our district staff. I know that Abe Medina with the recreation program also uses a drone quite a bit. I don't, I know that the other users that use this use their drones to create, they're required to go out and monitor conservation easements. And they have a practice of, instead of going out every year like they used to before COVID and before other technology, they may do an on-site visit once every 3 years and then do drone monitoring every other. I think in some cases, this may be able to replace some of that drone kind of imagery.
And what was the number you mentioned? 300,000 acres, what was that?
Right. If we have access through the standard Lens platform, access to visual, to look at and see these and see selected properties. If we wanted to, though, download some of these imagery, these data sets to create a permanent record for our records, we would have to pay for that at a cost between, I think it's 3 cents and 9 cents an acre, so an average of 6 cents an acre. That would cover about 300,000 acres worth of imagery.
Okay. And this seems like something that'd be really useful for CPW too. Is there any effort to cost share or have a bigger, more hours of training and seats?
We would
cost
love that.
Yeah.
I think Lens would love that too. CPW would love that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they don't have the funding for this right now.
Okay.
And I know that there's been interest for them to come over and peek over our shoulder how we use it. I know the Colorado Department of Agriculture is very interested in it as well. We are very lucky to have the I&D fund for us to be able to use this to test this out and push it to its limits.
And last question, you said it gives us access to 20 years historical, right?
Back going with some of the data sets of these 72 different data sets, some of them have some information going back longer or just not as far back, but there's imagery like even Google kind of will have certain data sets going back.
But how far back does the really good imagery go back? Is that like 15 years?
I will pass that question to Miles when we're done, unless Miles, you want to kind of answer that question now?
I could chime in really briefly there. Honestly, the exciting development of the past 5 years is that many of the best satellites have just recently gotten into orbit, which means that the State Land Board will be able to enjoy better and better imagery coverage each year. That being said, many of those sources weren't in orbit, more than 6 years ago or so from those various commercial sources. However, in Lens, we're aggregating lots of different sources that are public. So that includes imagery from NASA, European Space Agency, and other public sources that have been capturing imagery for longer. And so State Land Board staff will be able to access USDA NAEP imagery, which is captured back to about 2003 or 2004 in Colorado. And so that's a really helpful baseline high resolution image that's of comparable image quality to a modern commercial image. And so it's a really helpful baseline image just to understand what properties used to look like and whether any disturbances have happened over the past 20 years or so.
So is it worth taking some staff time to review what's happened in the last 20 years and to get a baseline, 10, 20 years ago?
I think I know in particular on the Stewardship Trust properties, we really want to put this to the test and see what it can tell us. One of the questions that came up the last 1332 working group was, how has the State Land Board and staff been monitoring and evaluating, what are the metrics that we've been using? And we don't really have the metrics. We certainly have been monitoring the properties and creating inspection reports, but in terms of creating these metrics that we can evaluate over time, it's possible we could use Lens to go back and measure those over time.
Yeah, thanks.
But certainly moving forward.
Yeah.
Other questions, Commissioner? I have a question for you, Mindy, and maybe it's outside my competency set for sure, but this is the imagery, and if we were trying to use it over time for sussing out sort of the composition of ground cover, or using, there's all kinds of like models and out there to help use the imagery, interpret it, and then be able to give us indications of like moisture retention and soil health even. I'm wondering if, as we're playing with a lens platform over the next 2 years, we could also be thinking about what are some of those models out there that might help us interpret that data again over time.
Miles, do you want to talk about that? There are features, and I highlight, there's only like 2 or 3 more slides, but I focus a little bit on what are some of the opportunities for our lease monitoring and property management. But Miles, can you answer that question, specific layers that address those, soil saturation, moisture saturation of the soil, for example, or forage element, or the ability to detect certain kinds of noxious weeds?
Right.
Absolutely. So in Lens, there's essentially 2 types of data. There's the commercial high resolution images. Those are really helpful for instance, looking at the encroachment on the Lower Moore property. And we also have lots of public data sets. And as part of those public data sets, those include essentially spectral bands of imagery or data that allow us to help folks interpret things like vegetation vigor, surface moisture, surface water, etc. And so in Lens, State Land Board staff will be able to essentially analyze properties, compare them across different areas to understand how a specific area, a much broader section might compare to others in terms of growth or forage availability due to forage cover and the availability of moisture, etc. And so that is most of those insights are easily packaged into our analyze area chart. And so this is essentially a very non-technical way for State Land Board staff to easily get answers from that data. So I personally used to do easement monitoring in Colorado. And so the way that I used to use Lens to answer questions would be, how has the 2025 grazing season compared to 2023? Or when exactly did this disturbance to this vegetation happen? Was it a couple of days ago? Was this 3 months ago? All those sorts of things you can really easily answer using this public data and that analysis chart. And the beauty of it being public data is that there's no sort of per acre cost for that sort of analysis work in Lens. And so State Land Board is able to do that sort of analysis work at a very large scale without being hampered by the per acre costs of high resolution imagery.
Thank you. Just quick follow-up specifically, like the ability to discern in vegetative cover what are noxious weeds, and is there diversity of forbs? Are we going to be able to get
I'm not
that?
sure about the the level of diversity of forbs. There are certain weed categories like cheatgrass, for example, that greens up very early in the spring compared to others. A Lens is very good at detecting that. Whether it's
cool season versus warm season.
or
grasses,
this kind
hard
of
to
thistle versus that, I don't know. I don't think it can do that yet. But staff is also collecting data on the ground. One thing we do have on our stewardship trust properties are species lists. And so looking at how do we use that information to create an index of, like a conservation index on the property for the diversity of the property. So there's ways that we can combine it, but I don't think we can integrate it into Lens necessarily yet.
And it sounds like a good idea. You're proposing to maybe have a more robust application for the stewardship trust property, sort of as a startup.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Okay, I'm just going to finish the last 2 slides. So really, our goals are to increase effective monitoring. We're hoping that the Lens platform can allow us to see more of each property, even if we don't have, boots on the ground on every acre of that, and really allow us to know before we go, identify sites that might need a closer look, like upon inspection. This photograph is actually a photograph of a property of ours in Northeast Colorado. That is a restoration of a well pad, like a former well pad site. And so we can, track how revegetation of that is going. Other areas are, as we can estimate residual dry matter or forage utilization, how well our properties are being utilized like over time and throughout the year. Identify irrigated areas and water usage. This can be done on irrigated properties or even to some degree looking at moisture in the soil, spring versus fall perhaps, and then surface disturbance over time. And then finally, really increasing our ecological knowledge of properties, and allow us to quantify site-specific and regional trends. This is a photograph of a property in Moffat County where you can see conifer encroachment coming down the slope and going into sagegrass, the sagebrush areas. We can actually use Lens to quantify that level of encroachment and identify properties that would potentially be, allow us to go in and do, to cut back that conifer and improve greater sage-grouse habitat. Looking at changes to wetlands and riparian areas. The photograph that I showed very early in the presentation showed this wetland. Our goal that's been identified as a stream, potential stream enhancement project. And also looking at change over time with prairie dog colonies. We know there are a lot on our lands. We don't know how many. I couldn't even tell you what the amount was per county, but this is something that we're hoping to use Lens for as well. So with that, staff recommendation is that the board determine it's in the best interest of the trust to approve up to $110,000 I&D funds to contract with Upstream Tech for 2-year agreement. And we'll come back to you at the end of the year as part of our annual stewardship report, and let you know what we've learned in each of our different lines of business.
Thank you for the presentation. Any further clarifying questions before we turn to public comment?
Folks listening along online, if you'd like to make a comment on this item, use the raise hand feature and bring it forward so you can come to the board. No hands raised.
Right, let's undertake a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed I&D fund request for up to $110,000 to contract with Upstream Tech for its Lens AI assisted aerial imagery and mapping platform.
Second.
Thank you for the motion in a second. Commissioner Pribble,
Second, yes.
how do you vote?
Yes.
Oh, excuse me. We're gonna have discussion.
Yes.
Yeah, so there were some really good questions here. It was a wholesome presentation. Any observations or opinions you'd like to share?
I'm really excited about it. I'm just really interested to see what we see. I hope it's a great tool.
It'd be cool to hear from Mindy you in a year
Yes.
and just let us know how you think it's going and how staff is using it.
I look forward to using, not just the management tool, but the ability to tell stories, that's been brought up a few times in different ways to how the state land board can get its its message across.
It seems like it has a two-pronged benefit, as you've laid out. One is the potential for it to really save staff time and allow staff to be more effective in terms of observation and decision-making about properties, but also will become more adept and able to think of other lines of inquiry and, maybe other opportunities out there that'll advance even this in terms of assessing our portfolio. So thank you for the presentation, and there being no other discussion, let's have a vote. Commissioner Pribble?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Commissioner Heath? Mr. Scanlon?
Aye.
And the chair votes yes. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Strickard.
Good morning.
All right, appreciate Nick bringing up my presentation. He's probably got that something on him. Morning, Commissioners. I'm Wilbur Strickard, Northeast District Manager, and here today to present to you an I&D fund request for our largest irrigation farm in Yuma County. So this property is located in the very different part of Yuma County. right over here in this little blue block, just a few miles away out of Nebraska. This is a up close picture of our property here. And you guys probably saw in the packet that there was a IND fund request for this very same property in December of 24. And I believe we have a couple new commissioners since then. So I'm going to go over just a couple things that were done there at that time. So during that presentation, we requested to have a lot of our wells reworked. We requested for a couple pivots and renozzling of pivots. And so the new pivots that you guys approved are these two right here. And those pivots are up, completed. They used those last year. They worked well. And then 5-7 right here, this one, we just rebuilt the complete pivot, redid the alignment system on everything. That was done last year. They used that. And then these three right here, or I should say these two right here. These two right here were well work. We redid the pumps on them, pulled them out of the hole, redid the pump, put the pump back down the hole, re-nozzled it to the gallons per minute that was fit for that well. And then 5-8 here, they ran out of time, couldn't complete everything before irrigation season. So 5-8, they picked it up this fall. And 5-8 is, as we speak, being completed. They pulled the pump out, rebuilt the pump, put it back down the hole. And unfortunately, when they turned it on the test pump, the whole casing just went and sucked in and collapsed. We had enough contingency fund in the budget to be able to go ahead and fix that project. They are working on that as we speak. I talked to Alex and he said he believes the liner got slid in a week ago and they're should be completing that. So that one is almost done. So that brings us back to the one that we are here today with is 5-5. And this one has kind of been the ongoing problem. And I know there was a lot of questions on this one when I had the presentation in December of 24. So give a little history on this. This well is 47 years old. It's how when it was drilled, and it has not been relined. Nothing's been done to it. Land Board acquired it in 1996, and we have not done any work on the pump. We've never pulled the pump out of the hole until that request came in December of 24 when we wanted to do that. And the useful life of a pump is approximately 20 years. So we've been running on borrowed time for these for quite some time. There was a little work that we asked for. Can't remember the exact year of it, but we lowered a few of the wells. This was one that we attempted to lower. And at that time, we knew there was a problem because the pump would not slide down the hole. So when I came to you guys in December of 24, that's why there was a inflated dollar amount asking for more, because we knew the potential was there that there was going to have to be more, possibly a redrill on this well. Our contractors got going in this, and then they figured out that we were going to have to redrill. So what I got here is, this is a short diagram, kind of how a well works for anybody that's not familiar with this, but pretty much what it is, you have a motor here at the top, and this motor spins a turbine that goes down this pipe. And these three little spots here, kind of these, are called bowls. And what that is just it's a big old cast iron piece, and it's kind of round, and it has a turbine in there. And that shaft that goes all the way down from the top spins in those and causes a suction, and it pulls the water up from the bottom here. This is your perforations in the casing, your gravel here where your water is, and your water fills in this, comes through these perforations and fills us in. What they believe happened with this particular well is somewhere in here, they can't see it with their camera that they ran down the well, but somewhere in here, this got a hole in the side of this casing in here. And when this turns on and pumps, it causes a suction and just sucks the sand down the well. It's been sucking sand in the well for a very, very long time because it's filled in with over 100 feet of sand. So it's significant. They tried, they thought, we'll see how well we can pull the sand out of the hole with a sand bucket. They were unsuccessful. It was just going to be cost prohibitive. So they just stopped at that point and came back to me and said, what do you think? We need to re-drill this well. So since they were unable to complete it last spring, they ran out of time, costs have went up a little bit. And so that's why we're here today, to ask for a little bit additional funds. So I got a table here to kind of go through. A little bit of well history here, and I think this is important, is static water level is at 100 feet. And that's why we're here and we feel comfortable with drilling a new well because as Justin tells me all the time, this is the prime area in the whole basin of the Republican River. This is the deepest part. We're expected that this is going to last for some time, probably past the life expectancy of the pumps and so forth. So we're at a static water level of 99. This was a level that was taken by the land board approximately 8 years ago. And then our well depth is 295. So we're proposing about 300 foot is what will end up going. And then the pump depth is sitting at about 210 right now. So as you can tell, there is quite a distance that this pump can be lowered down into the aquifer. We had a estimated cost of $86,000 before. With our new estimate that they came in, they estimate a little bit low for that and cost went up. So we're at 135. So we're asking the board today for $75,000, and that's with the contingency because if we don't ask for enough, there is not time to come back to you guys and ask for more money again because irrigation season starts May. And so they've got to have time to get it done. And so that's why the contingency is a little bit more than what we usually ask for. And so staff is recommending today that the board approve an additional $75,000 of I&D funds to complete the irrigation well upgrades on the state trust land in Yuma County. And do you guys have any questions for me? It looks like there's a few.
Why did the cost go up?
That's the question that I had for them as well. So I brought both estimates, and when they did the estimates on this, prices go up every year. That's part of it. And the other thing is when they did their estimates, apparently their spreadsheet must not have worked and carried some of the things that they have listed on here did not add up in the total at the bottom. And so there were several of those that accounted in there, and then just costs just went up for what their contractor is asking. Quality Irrigation subcontracts out the well drilling portion, but they do all the pump work and everything themselves. So that contractor has raised their price, what they ask per foot to drill.
Okay. And is this aquifer called the Republican River? Or is this part of the?
It's actually the Ogallala
Okay.
Aquifer, but it's in the Republican River watershed.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. Bill?
Am I correct to assume that we provide this kind of infrastructure for many or most or all lessees of irrigated property, or is this a one-off situation?
That depends on the irrigation property. This is a farm that we purchased in 1996, so we own all the improvements on this one. So this one's very unique in that situation that we do own everything. There are some other properties where we just own parts of the infrastructure. And then there's some of them where we don't own any of the infrastructure. We just own the property and the water.
So do we have any standard or criteria for when we're going to make an investment to improve? Is it just arbitrary to the district manager like yourself?
It's usually when it's needed. When we're seeing that need for it, then we come to the board and ask for property to be fixed. This kind of goes before your time, but Nick would know this better than me. But there was at a certain point where I&D funds couldn't be used to exactly repair wells. They had to be used to just purchase new things that had to show a return. So we got a little behind on some of the maintenance in there. And I can't remember what year that happened where they went to the I&D fund where we could repair stuff better.
Yes.
Yeah, Elliot Hoyt, Assistant Director. I mean, to your question, actually, spot on that we definitely rely on the district managers in terms of informing us which properties are going to be worth, investing in improvements. In particular, irrigated agri, gets much higher lease rates than dry land, right? And so if we have a property like this, which, as Wilbur said, is largest irrigated agriculture property in Yuma County, it's a very good lease for us. It produces good revenue for us. And so this is a situation where the team, looked at it, came to me, we discussed it at field ops and said, all right, is this going to continue to produce? Is this, you know, is this a good lease that is worth putting money into? Significant amount of money. You know, are we going to get the return from that? Is this a property that is going to continue to yield for us? And the answer was yes, that this is an important property. It's worth it. But yes, we do have criteria. We do analyze it from a business perspective. Is this a good place for us to spend money on a lease that we care about?
And as a point of clarification, maybe a question is, I imagine since we own the irrigation improvements and we have a lease that promises that we'll deliver water.
Yeah.
That we would be in default if we don't fix this and they're not getting water. They don't have to pay the high lease rates
Yeah,
and,
right.
or we then
Yeah.
stop
Right.
leasing it for irrigated,
Yeah.
so.
Yes, exactly. If we do not fix this well, we would do our best about putting the pump back down the hole, and we would significantly reduce the irrigated acres for this particular pivot until we decided to, go forward and fix it.
Well, and I was particularly interested in the payback on this was 1.6 years. And I didn't check the lease. What's the lease termination date?
I think they have, I'm gonna say 8 years left.
I
on
was
it.
gonna say it's relatively new.
Yeah, that's all.
It is several years.
Yeah. Commissioner Harvey?
Is the standard for abandonment on an aquifer the same as for riparian? Is it 10 years? Do you know? As in, if we didn't fix this, we'd lose those water rights?
I don't believe so, but I'll let Justin answer that one.
Justin Berry, Water Program Manager. So this is in a designated groundwater basin, and the statutes for designated groundwater basins are different for abandonment. I believe this is under our what's called a final permit, and those really, from what I understand, they're not subject to abandonment.
Okay. Thanks.
That's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Wilbur? Do we have any public comment out there?
Folks listening along online, raise your hand if you want to make a comment on this item. No hands are raised.
Would someone like to make a motion on this board order?
Motion?
Commissioner Harvey's made a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the use of an additional $75,000 of investment of IND funds to complete the irrigation well upgrades on state trust land in Yuma County.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Pribble. Discussion and observations, commissioners? Yeah, this is well laid out, and I do think that we have water, we need to produce water, and we need to collect the revenue. So it's unfortunate that we lost some time, but it seems to me that this financially holds together and we have lessees dependent on it. Any other thoughts or observations? Oh, all right, well, let's have a vote. I'm gonna shake it up. Commissioner Scanlon.
Aye.
Commissioner Heath. Commissioner Harvey.
Aye.
Commissioner Pribble.
Aye.
And the chair votes yes. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I have a question involving the IDP fund. It does not relative to this past action or immediate action, but looking at this summary page on, I guess it's page 2 of 2, exhibit 3, page 12 of 13 in our docket. The fund has an opening balance of 6.5 million, transfers in another 5 million, yet earned a mere 89,000. What do we, is that fund invested someplace? And obviously not a very lucrative investment.
It's those monies, when not being used, are invested in interest-bearing accounts per the treasurer's directive, because it's part of a bigger cash pool. We don't get to make the decisions on how investments are made for that money. They need to have, a certain liquidity level of that cash. So I could certainly explore it a little bit and give you some insight.
Yeah.
But it's part of the cash pool that all state cash, if it's sitting around, is invested in.
This looks like it just sits in a checking account getting less than 1%. This is less than 1%.
Well, it depends on what the actual cash balance is. Some of those numbers are just in the ledgers.
That's a lot of, yeah, please look into that and let us know it. So
Staff would
convenient
be-
time in the future. This is
staff would
really
be happy to-
startling.
This isn't in the permanent fund. This is segregated dollars.
Yeah,
Correct.
I understand, but that doesn't mean it's, I mean, it's not maybe largely out of our influence. I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. All right. We're leasing agenda.
Good morning, Commissioners. Andy Bissett for the Transactions and Record Services team. We have a brief board leasing agenda for your review this month. Consisting only of 2 items, one new recreation lease in Los Animas County and one solar planning extension in Weld County. Staff can answer any questions you may have and does recommend approval of the February board leasing agenda.
I have a question for you, Andy, just, and maybe we talked about this before, or it was another lease. Can you enlighten us as to why they've held it for 8 years? They need 2 more. There's obviously something that didn't get done, or?
Sure, I asked David Rodenberg to be available for any solar questions, so he's available.
Good morning, Commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, good morning, David.
Good morning. Yeah, so this lease has been a little bit of a challenge for Nextera. They've had several different opportunities that haven't moved forward, but if you recall, this is the property where the board approved a battery storage production lease. And it took 25 acres out of that planning lease. And that's a pretty significant revenue generator for the board. It's around $50,000 a year, with some initial $100,000 payments for installation, bonus payments, etc. But their hope is that that will help encourage their solar project, which includes the remaining acres here, as well as some private land acres. So yeah, we felt that it made sense to stick with Nextera to hopefully get a production lease with solar panels in the future.
So what exactly is the hang of? Is it permitting, or is it getting investors, or what's the?
No, they have all of that. They have enough money. They have permitting. They're just trying to get a PPA with the right
TPA.
utility.
Okay.
Yeah, the power purchase agreement. Sorry, and they've applied for several that just hadn't worked out yet. And they're applying for additional ones with Excel and currently with Excel.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification.
You bet.
Questions, commissioners? Nick, let's see if there's any public comment on this item.
Folks listening along online, feel free to raise your hand if you wanted to make a comment on this item. And I'm going to say that there's none because there's no public listening along online.
Oh,
It's all
well, there
staff.
you go. Assistant Director.
Yeah, I was just gonna add that Excel's request for proposals that was supposed to be issued in November has been pushed out, and industry doesn't quite know exactly when it's gonna hit the streets, but they kind of expect it in the next few months. So that's likely what Nextera is gonna be submitting for.
Okay.
So this is truly 1,000-acre solar farm? What's the 1,000 acres? Sounds huge.
It's a planning lease.
Oh, okay.
And so, and most of our planning leases do not end up being.
I see. They
this-
get
they're
an
figuring out the best.
opportunity to look at the whole piece and then scale it down, whatever. Okay.
Yeah, but as David said, I don't know the specifics of this one, but it sounds like there's some private land included in this as well, so it could be very big.
Okay.
All right, well, may we have a motion?
I move we approve the board leasing agenda for February 2026.
Thank you, Commissioner Scanlon. May I have a second?
Second.
All righty, let's have a vote. Commissioner Harvey,
Aye.
Commissioner Heath, Commissioner Scanlon.
Aye.
Chair votes yes, and Commissioner Pribble is excused at the moment. Commissioner Pribble, how would you vote on the February leasing agenda?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
David, did you want to say something else about the solar?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I'm not sure why the acres says 1,040 on there. The actual acres that remains, the total acres on that parcel is 583. And the remaining acres after the battery storage is removed is around 432. So I think that might be an error with our system that created the 1,040. There are additional private acres, but that's not what that number is. Just wanted to clarify for the board.
Thank you for the clarification.
Does that raise any concerns?
I don't think so. Just let the record acknowledge that there's a corrected amount on it. All right. And then as to the minutes, do any commissioners have any comments or revisions to the minutes from last month? All right. Well, then the minutes from last month's meeting will be considered approved by acclamation. And we will move into our information items.
Should we want to take a test?
Folks, do you need a break? Seems like people have had them. Would you like a break? Or would you like to keep rolling?
Keep rolling.
Yeah, I think we're almost good. I think so too. We're gonna keep rolling. Thank you, Director. Now on to the staff report.
Okay. This is Director Nicole Rosmarino, and I just wanted to highlight a couple features in the staff report. We staff took 66 lease actions that collectively raise $1.5 million for the State Land Board, and coming in on top again is agriculture, followed closely by commercial real estate. The next thing I wanted to mention is that through the first half fiscal year, and the current fiscal year, our operating revenues exceeded $116 million. But this is a decrease of 9%, and it's really because of a sizable reduction in oil royalties, and I assume that's because of the price of oil. And so it really highlights something that we've been increasingly mindful of, which is the vulnerability given our outsized reliance on oil and gas revenue, and particularly royalties. So just wanted to highlight that. I've already mentioned the addition of Dr. Vickers to our staff, and you can read all about his impressive resume in the staff report. Wanted to mention very successful ag forums conducted in late January in Craig and in Lamar, and we will be providing more information to you next month. We got really incredible survey results of the participants reporting very excellent information that's useful as they look at their own private land, as well as their leases with the State Land Board. And so I wanted to commend a number of staff for making that possible, starting with Jess Price, our regenerative agriculture program manager, Rachel Turner, as well as Jared Smith and Eric Van Dyke. So really well done on the ag forums. Relatedly, the Colorado Farm Show was an excellent opportunity to connect with existing lessees, as well as reaching young producers. And I know Emily Barbeau really led the charge there, so thanks, Emily. And finally, I wanted to extend the staff's bittersweet congratulations to Rachel Myich. She left the State Land Board for the Colorado Department of Agriculture. We will miss her, but we wish her well. And that's all.
And are on the replacement in Rachel's position, are you all looking at that position description? Is that likely to change, or are you seeking to just quickly fill it, or?
Thank you for the question, Chair. We are already advertising to fill it, with some slight modifications, but generally the same approach, and Andy Bissett is leading that charge with assistance from Deputy Director Massey.
We are acutely trying to get that filled. It's a
Yeah.
lot. It's a big job.
Because it's almost roadshow season.
Yeah, well, even homebred meetings are
Mhm.
a lot to coordinate as well. So thank you to staff, Emily, for
Yeah.
getting, and DRS for getting stuff.
Is it
covered.
posted?
It is
Yeah.
posted.
So where's the posting? Where are state jobs at?
I will circulate the posting.
Yeah,
to the
I don't mind getting it out
commissioners.
to folks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. And now. Working group. Thank you for the write-up. Yeah. Are you all presenting, or are we just discussing?
We are presenting.
Okay.
Have a slide deck. It's gonna blow you away.
Oh, boy.
Nice, nice.
It's actually Mindy's slide deck. We're just gonna use it again.
Just the cover.
It's really well written.
Yeah, there was a lot of interesting information in there.
Yeah.
For the record, I am Nicole Rosarino, Director of the State Land Board, and I'm here with Deputy Director Massey and also DNR Director of Policy Erin Ray to provide you an update on the State Trust Lands Conservation and Recreation Work Group that was created through HB 25-1332. The memo included in your board packet includes a description of the work group and some helpful links, including DNR's landing page for this effort, which is full of really helpful materials to each of the meetings that have been conducted thus far. And it also includes the report that the State Land Board provided to the work group that was statutorily required to be delivered by February 1st, and we provided it a couple days early. You have all requested regular updates on this law, and we've been providing news through the staff report, but the first formal update was back in November after the first meeting of the work group had been conducted in late October. So this is your second standalone update. At present, the work group has met 3 times, and the State Land Board staff has been very actively participating and providing technical support for the work group's convenings. And I'm very grateful in particular to Deputy Director Massey, who has been putting in a lot of time on this project on top of all of his other weighty duties. So thank you, Nick. Nick has been our lead, and I also want to thank Erin, who's just done a wonderful job coordinating this whole effort and really providing much needed clarity and structure for the endeavor. Other staff that have been participating include myself, Assistant Directors Hoyt and Smith, as well as Abe Medina, Mindy Gott-Segan, Lindsay Brandt, and others. So it's a big team effort here to help make this endeavor a success. The issues with which the work group is considering they're very, very important to the State Land Board and overlap with some of the themes that you all talked about just yesterday, stewardship and layered leasing, being good examples. So I know some of you listened to the last work group meeting, and you can always do that. You can follow the work in real time. And as I mentioned, the DNR landing page on this effort really provides helpful information, including recordings of each of the meetings. These are meetings that are open to the public. Sometimes there is public comment at those, but you can always listen along. You can attend in person if it's an in-person meeting. Your next couple meetings are going to be virtual. And on that landing page, there's also agendas and summaries of the work groups meetings. So that's helpful information for you. So you can always get those updates, but we have also committed to making sure staff keeps you apprised as we go through this process. So now I'd like to turn it over to Aaron.
Thank you, Nicole. Hello, commissioners again. As Nicole mentioned, I want to talk a bit about the legislation, the charge to the work group, what we've done so far and what is to come. And then I'll hand it over to Nick to talk about the ways that the State Land Board staff have been informing and supporting the work group. As a reminder, House Bill 25-1332 directed the Executive Director of DNR to convene a state trust lands conservation and recreation work group. The bill charges that group with studying opportunities for the State Land Board to advance conservation, climate resilience, biodiversity, and sustainable, equitable, and low conflict outdoor recreation. Notably, the study is required to be conducted in a manner consistent with the State Land Board's fiduciary duty. And so that has been one of the significant topics of conversation thus far with the work group, is how do we pursue these goals while also recognizing and maintaining that duty. There are two formal requirements that the work group must produce. One is an interim report, which is due on March 16th, so coming up in about a month. That report must be submitted to the governor, to the House Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources Committee, to the Senate Agricultural and Natural Resources Committee, notably to this audience, to you all as the State Board of Land Commissioners. You will get that report, as well as the Executive Director of DNR. The work group is in the process of working on this report. I'm going to talk more about that in just a minute. The second significant deliverable is a final report due September 1st of 2026, submitted to the same parties. The legislation outlines a number of very specific things that the work group needs to study, and I'll talk about those in a moment. Those will be delivered as recommendations in this final report. For the interim report, which I just mentioned, there are many fewer specific requirements for what is to be included in that. And so I'll talk in a moment about what we're anticipating will be in that interim report. The reason I'm calling out the difference here is when you see the interim report, it'll largely sort of update you on progress, but it's really this final report due September 1st that we expect to have significant substantive recommendations. One reason that that's important is the legislation also requires that you, as the commissioners, consider the work group's recommendations. That is a requirement of the statute. So you're going to get that report by September 1st, and then by February 15th of the next year, 2027, you need to consider those recommendations, and then you are directed to adopt policy or rules to establish a number of things that are listed here on this slide. How you do that will obviously be something that will be a topic for you all to address, but there are specific things that you're asked to consider and adopt, including a process for governing the implementation of conservation leases, a process for substantiating how the State Land Board balances revenue generation with conservation, and a number of other things there on the slide. Commissioner Pro.
Curious, this is probably more a question for Councilor Hamrick. Is this, are we required to, or is it at our discretion to implement the recommendations of this committee?
I'm not looking at the bill and don't recall precisely, so this
Maybe
is,
you could look into that as time goes on.
yeah, be
Thank
happy
you.
to.
Yeah, I would defer to your counsel on that, but I will note that the language here is pretty close to what's in the statute. And so the key is consider the recommendations. That's a pretty broad mandate.
More permissive.
That's right. And then there are these specific things. So by my read, those are sort of aligned, but two distinct pieces of direction, but obviously defer to your counsel on how you achieve that mandate.
Not that we would have any reason to ignore the considered judgment of such an august committee.
We do have to consider the two pillars that council mentioned earlier, though, so.
Yes.
Stick with one pillar.
The other thing that I will note, and this is just my opinion, reading the tea leaves of this group, right? I'm not a work group member. I don't determine what ends up in the recommendations. I would be surprised if the final recommendations didn't include both specific things that the state land board can implement, as well as potentially things that would require legislative or other policy change. And so again, we don't know what that final report looks like. But when we see it, I imagine there will be conversation about which of those recommendations is within your purview and which is not. And that's a conversation we'll have later this year. So the key here is you're going to get a final report and you're required to consider what's in it. So in terms of the progress that's been made so far, the work group members were appointed in September of last year. It is a diverse group representing a diverse set of interests. We've had really good engagement from work group members in the meetings. As Director Rosmarino mentioned, we've had a number of in-person meetings. We'll have a number of virtual meetings this year. You can see there the meetings that have been held so far in October, December, and just a couple of weeks ago in January, which included a tour of the Lowry Ranch. And I was just speaking to a work group member yesterday who expressed a tremendous appreciation for that opportunity to get out onto the ground. So I think that was a really valuable opportunity for work group members to see what your staff does. So that's where we've been. Where we're going, and this is small, but I believe you have access to these slides. This is a slide that we shared with the work group members at the meeting in January. This outlines the meetings to come. Our next meeting is March 5th. That's a full day virtual meeting. As Director Rosmarino mentioned, those are open to the public, so folks can watch online. They can also provide public comment if they're interested. At that March meeting, one of the tasks of the work group will be to finalize the interim report. The work group has looked at a draft of that report. We are working on work group member feedback on that draft. We will present to them a final interim report at that meeting on the 5th, because as statute directs, that has to be submitted to you all and the other recipients by the 16th. In that report, what the current draft reflects is essentially a progress report. Here's what we have done so far, and here are the themes and topics that the work group is interested in. The draft that the work group has reviewed thus far does not include final recommendations. The work group has so far been thinking about those final recommendations as showing up in the final report in September, but not in this interim report. So with the caveat that we haven't finalized it yet, so I can't tell you exactly what's going to be in it. What I would expect is more of a progress report with highlighting the themes and ideas that the work group is considering, but not final recommendations. So that's up for our next meeting. And then you'll see in meetings 4, 5, and 6, the real focus of the work group is developing those final recommendations to be included in that report in September. We've done a lot of education in the last couple of meetings. We're sort of shifting from education of the work group members to now let's figure out what that group wants to recommend to you all and the governor and the legislature. So we've bucketed those recommendations in the next few meetings in sort of thematic buckets. So the meeting in March, we're going to focus on conservation and climate resilience and agriculture and recreation, and then other sort of buckets of recommendations in subsequent meetings. And then you'll notice meetings 7 and 8 are really about reviewing all of the work that's been done, agreeing on those final recommendations, drafting the final report, and getting that report done by September 1st. So that's what we envision. And I just want to say, maybe turn it over to Nick in just a moment. The note that I would make about this slide is you'll note there's a date there as of January 29th. This is a dynamic process. I expect there'll be changes to this schedule as the work group moves through its work, but this is what we envision so far. So that's where we're headed. One thing I want to finish with is just appreciation for the State Land Board staff for all of the support that they have provided to this process. That includes the logistical support of making sure these meetings are happening and people get fed and work group members get reimbursed for their time, but also the substantive support to the planning team, to the consultant that we've hired, and to the work group members in educating all of us about what the State Land Board does, how the process works, what your role and engagement is. All of that stuff has been invaluable. So huge appreciation for the State Land Board staff. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jake.
So how do you take several dozen people who are experts in their own right, in their own fields, and help them be effective, thoughtful partners in how to handle state trust lands in Colorado? I think as a starting point, we built an orientation that looks a lot like the ones we give to our commissioners as you join our board for the first time. All along the way, reinforcing the mandates that we have based on the Constitution. We are a fiduciary trust. You have fiduciary duty. Staff acts on your behalf. And we went through a lot of that material, highlighting the way our governance works, the way decisions generally get made, or the notion that the board is the decision maker. And in some cases, the board has delegated some decisions to staff, but it's all bundled up in good policy, good practice, and lots of prescriptive governance. Based on some early, and so to say, taking 150 years of history, 30 years of practice following Amendment 16 to the Constitution, there were places where we needed to drill in a little bit more with more clarity. The bill itself asks for recommendations ultimately to be offered on stewardship trust activity, and to consider how management of the saline and internal improvements trusts look today, and perhaps we should consider changes to those things and how they function. So we had quite a bit of presentation and material on stewardship, of course, and then some of the history of the saline trust and internal improvements trusts. And then most recently, we turned to trying to empower the work group to function a little bit the way that staff does. We talk a little bit about tools that we use. We've shared some of the things like our line of business review, where we go through a fairly methodical process of figuring out supportive leases, mitigating conflicts between uses, all of those things. We've done a lot of outreach and informing on how partners play a role in the work that we do. There is a fair amount of concern that, with CPW being experts on wildlife, how much of a role do they play in our work? And so we've had lots of opportunities to highlight our partnership with them and the formal connections that we make on our leasing decisions and other partners. And all along the way, in pursuit of the recommendations that need to come out of the work of the work group, we've been doing things like making presentations to Colorado Municipal League, Colorado Counties, Inc., the regional partnership initiatives across the state, because those folks need to have an opportunity to engage with the process as well by statute. And so those things are processes that we've stood up in cooperation with Aaron and Tim Brass and the work group itself. We've shared what our report to the working group looked like. It had to fulfill 4 primary criteria. Sort of disclosure of the leases that are happening on stewardship trust parcels. So we've done a little bit more than that. We've provided, well, I should say it in a minute. Try to provide any insight we can on those times when we denied to get into leasing with somebody because it was an incompatible use. Incompatible is a term that comes up in the bill in several places. There's lots of things in that bill that need definition. And so we're doing our best to help the work group understand how we define them, including something as important as natural values, because it's required by the bill. But interestingly, natural values appears in, I think it's in Constitution, but the Constitution doesn't say exactly what natural values management looks like. And then there was a piece of this report that needed to talk about recreation on trust lands in other states. It's interesting that that's sort of the sole place in the bill that the bill drafters acknowledged that there are trust lands in other states, and they might be models for how some things could work in Colorado. So we provided a well-received report to the work group on that. Lots of compliments about the level of information that was in there. And I'm really proud of staff for having built the tools that we've then shared with the work group. These are some pretty effective tools and keep us really consistent in our decision making over time. As part of the conversation, there's been this sort of thought guiding framework that's bubbled up, and those of a certain age see CCP and start to think of the Soviet Union, maybe. But it's missing a C, so shame on me for not coming up with a third C. But so I think we're starting to coalesce around decision making that takes into account 3 factors that have been boiled down to criteria, constraints, and pursuits. And adding a little bit of flesh to that frame, we suggested to the work group that thinking about what are the criteria of leasing or of stewardship or any factors that we take into account, specifically pointing at leasing and saying what is needed to be accomplished in this lease. At its core, it's a contract, it's a business contract, and it needs to contain provisions and protections for lots of different things in that relationship. There's the concept of constraints. What are the things in the environment or in business or in state government that we need to kind of bump our way around and make sure that we don't run afoul of anything like rules or management plans or strategy or any of the perils that are out there. And then pursuits kind of came from the State Land Board being an innovative and ambitious organization. In those cases where we are leasing a piece of ground for a particular use, are there opportunities that are present in that property that we can pursue that aren't necessarily about revenue, aren't necessarily about I don't know, some other factor. But one of the examples that always pops to mind for me is when we're leasing a piece of ground for grazing, can we get into partnership with a lessee who can put grazing activities on that ground that would leave it better off than it was when they got it? The State Land Board for a long time had some concerns about the way that some pieces of ground were left after they had been leased. There was that era of maximal revenue for somebody. And so we had some pieces of land that we wanted to see better things happen from. So are there those opportunities that we can pursue bigger and better for everything that's present on that property or its connectivity to other lands, et cetera? So we're suggesting to the work group that as they start to formulate recommendations, that they do keep these things in mind, that recommendations do have to fit kind of a mold. They can't be so off the wall that you can't contain them in a lease, or that they can't completely ignore state law, for example. So there, it's been helpful. We'll see where that goes. I imagine it will change a little bit over time, but yeah. So
With that, we'd love to open it up to your questions or comments.
So who manages this whole thing? Is it you guys or is there like a chair of the?
Yeah,
Aaron.
Commissioner, that's a good question. The statute directs that the executive director of DNR appoint and convene the work group. So officially it is the department. So that means the executive director's office. We hold the contract with the facilitator. I have largely been the lead for the executive director's office. Assistant Director Tim Brass, who you know, has been a key part of the executive director's office team. Working with Nicole and Nick, and there's a state land board team has been critical. So they're part of what we call the planning team, executive director's office, state land board staff, the consultant that we've hired. That's the group sort of orchestrating the meeting schedule and the agendas and those kinds of things. The work group itself is egalitarian. There are no chairs, there are no co-chairs. And so ultimately the decision making is largely by consensus, facilitated by this group and by the facilitator.
And
just go ahead, please.
do you, so in these discussions, ultimately, will the land board be part of the writing of it, or do we just receive it?
Yeah, another good question. So important to note, in addition to the appointed voting members of the work group, there's also a technical advisory group, which includes representatives from a number of state agencies. And the idea being that technical advisory group is available as a resource to the work group members when they have questions about various things. Director Rosmarino is one of the technical advisory group members. So she has a role representing the state land board on the work group as a technical advisory member. So that's one. Two, as I mentioned, state land board staff have been very involved in assisting with the planning. Ultimately, the report and the recommendations are the report and recommendations of the work group, not of DNR and not of the state land board staff. There'll be recommendations to DNR and to the state land board staff. So the responsibility for those recommendations sits with the work group members.
Thank you.
Mr. Privilege.
I guess a couple of questions. Well, 2 sentences back, Aaron, you said decisions are going to be decided or made by consensus, which causes me great alarm. And I violently object to it, the concept. And the reason is simple. Any facilitator driving to consensus, in effect, is driving you or the group to the lowest common denominator of acceptable outcome. It's not majority rule. It's driven by the minority. So that's my objection. And I would encourage that if to the extent whatever feasible or possible, maybe it's too late, that you try to employ a majority rule. I mean, at some point, one presumes that there's some agenda that's driving this whole exercise and that it will become more abundantly publicly understood. It's not understood yet, I don't think. It's maybe too early, likely too early. But I fervently object to the notion of decision by consensus. That's number one.
Could I respond to that?
Please.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I hear your objection. It wasn't violent, it may have been fervent. I think what I said was largely by consensus, and that was intentional. What we've said to the work group is that we will seek consensus where it's possible, but not a requirement that the recommendations have to reach consensus. What we've said to the work group is where we can find consensus, we will. Where we can't, we will. Statute defines them as voting members. So that suggests that there's a voting function at some point, if we need it, to decide what recommendations will be adopted by the work group. We have committed to the work group that we would include in the report dissenting views that may not be reflected in those recommendations. So I hear your objection. We have not committed to only including recommendations that reach consensus, but we are seeking that where we can.
Good. Well, I appreciate that clarification. I do urge that we preserve democracy as we know it, which is majority rule. And so I do appreciate that. Second question. Yesterday, of course, we dealt with the strategic plan, which I believe is going to be, correct me, Nicole, largely done. So I hope our strategic plan will be used to inform some of the 1332 working group rather than the other way around. Am I correct in saying that?
Well, I'll start, but I would welcome Nicole to weigh in on this. Our goal has been to get as much information as the work group needs, desires, and can use in front of them so that they understand the state land board. From my perspective, existing and future strategic plans are good sort of inputs into that process. How that actually happens sort of mechanically, and ultimately how this work group's work affects strategic plan, I would defer to Nicole, her thoughts about that.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. It's a good question, Commissioner Fribble. The intent was to share our new strategic plan with this work group. So to make sure that they saw that. We are not going to have the work group recommendations before our strategic plan is complete. But I'm hopeful that these updates will be helpful as those strategic plan conversations unfold. I did also want to add on the issue of consensus and disclosing dissenting opinions. That is codified in the work group charter, which is on that same DNR website. And we're not in a position to renegotiate that at this time.
So what is codified?
The decision-making standard.
And what is that decision-making standard?
Aaron just described it. It's
largely consensus.
For consensus, but when that's not possible, it is majority rule, and dissenting opinions will be disclosed in the report.
Well, I just want to warn this board. You could get outcomes that are antithetical to our constitutional mandate, or our interpretation of that mandate, and B, driven by a minority, not majority. It's not democracy.
Duly noted, Commissioner.
Well, I'll note since we run processes and we always have charters, it's often the same kind of language we use, where you can find consensus, and we're wary of least common denominator decision making. But sometimes there's a robust consensus. You want to note that, and we always note where there was a differing of opinion. And if it's a big difference, you have to note that. If it's a small difference, you note that. And I think you'll duly recognize those kind of nuances, I hope. I was really intrigued by, I think it's great you did the state research on how they handle public access, essentially. And I think that is one of the issues driving some of this process. Our very first meeting, Josie and I attended, there was an ardent person from a sportsman's perspective saying every state land board land or parcel should be open to the public for hunting and fishing as needed. And I think that is some of this. It was interesting to me because I'd never seen that, like how other states manage it. And frankly, it's all over the place. And I think our old public access program, hunting and fishing now, kind of met that scratching of the itch. So it'll be interesting to see how the group reacts to that, because we have very different views in the state from the ag community perspective to a sportsman's perspective. So I think that'll be really interesting to see how this group manages those tensions. So I'm glad you put that research in, because I've always wondered, like, are we an outlier? Or are we sort of in the, I think we've threaded that needle really well.
I agree. I feel like looking at all those, we optimize
Totally
both access and revenue.
Yes, and we've done it in a way, I just have to commend the staff. And it's particularly like Abe's work with some of this, where it fits. We've done a really good job of working with CPW and making that work. And where it doesn't, with particularly conflicts with ag and other lessees, that's served its purpose. And so I hope we can continue to highlight that and our willingness to kind of meet the public where they want to be.
Commissioner Scanlon, can I respond
Yeah.
to that? Because I like your positive framing, and that's very much how we're approaching this group. The group's charge is really looking at issue areas that are very important to us. You know, conservation, biodiversity, climate resilience, low conflict recreation. And I think having all of these different perspectives at the table and having the technical support that our agency, CPW, other agencies are providing, really just gives provides an excellent forum for these issues to really be analyzed and scrutinized from all different perspectives. And so I am hopeful that the recommendations that result help us to look at some of these issues with a fresh perspective, and maybe there will be some breakthroughs and how we can even further optimize what we're doing and you know, in this in these areas. So that's the energy that we're bringing to the table. And I think CPW is an excellent example where we looked at the Saline and Internal Improvements Trusts, and Abe presented for the State Land Board, and Fletcher Jacobs presented for CPW, and we could really share that the leases in place, you know, especially hunting and fishing access program, also the beneficiary use agreement and state wildlife area leases are really a product of decades of conversation between our two agencies. And so I think being able to share all of that context was very helpful for all of the work group members, including work group members that maybe have looked at this issue themselves, but they were able to hear from both the agencies. And as we move towards the work group developing recommendations, I think all that information is going to be on the table. So we're very optimistic that the September 1 report will be one that we can bring to you with recommendations for how this can move.
I think that's great. And particularly, it's not like we checked the box and said, okay, we're done. You know, these conversations continue. We're always open to other opportunities and ideas. So I think that collaboration and partnership, particularly with CPW, frankly, it's come a million miles, to be honest with you. So I think that's something to continue to highlight. And I have to just note the use of the word conservation is fascinating to me, because when we started, we weren't allowed to use the word. Honestly, we're like, we're not a conservation organization. So I will be wildly interested to see how that's used, how it's framed, and how it's defined in the context of the land board's work. And I think it's a really important word. So in not only in reference to stewardship, but how we incorporate that. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
May I ask Mr. Scanlon a question? You piqued my interest. When you said a couple sentences back, when I started, we weren't allowed to use the word
We
conservation.
never called ourselves a conservation organization. In fact,
Could
we
you
would
elaborate
say-
on that, please?
I don't entirely know why, but we would,
Who
in our
gave
presentation,
that instruction?
we would make a point when we were talking to county commissioners to say we're not a conservation organization. It was in the director's remarks. And I think because it held a certain connotation of what conservation is preserved in a certain way. And so we wanted to differentiate, I'm saying we as a collective, ourselves from, you know, we're not here to put land held in a certain way that's never, you know, touched. And now.
So is that attitude maintained in policy?
It used to be a bad word in the cattle industry.
Yeah,
Under
exactly.
conservation.
I think
And now
you're
it's not, you know, it's really changed.
Ex-
You know, good ranchers are
I
good
think-
conservationists, and they know that's a key word now in ranching. But in the old days, it was akin to being called, you know, a communist or something.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. So I think I just noted that because I think it's interesting. During my tenure now, we're sort of like in alignment with that. It seems that we're going that direction. So I think it'll be interesting to note that. And I'm sure you heard that as much as I did. That we would just make note, by the way, we are, in fact, go out of our way to say, we are not this. And I'm sure to Commissioner Harvey's point, it was trying to make clear,
Yeah.
particularly to the ag community, a certain stance. So, you know, good on us. We're evolving and learning and moving. And I think that's I think it's a positive thing. I'm only noting it.
Questions, comments? So remember the key dates, September 1st is when the final report will be issued by the work group itself. By February 15th, 2027, the board will need to take up any recommendations on modifications on policies, other actions. So the next 12 months are really pivotal. We'll keep you updated. If you want to keep yourself updated, there are those resources available, but we'll certainly be in front of you in a not too distant future with another update on this process.
And I'd just like to acknowledge, this is just a small bit of all the work on staff's part and your part, Director, that goes into this, in addition to a year where we're redoing a strategic plan, we're embarking on an asset allocation. There's a lot going on and you're all handling it just so competently and like ducks, you know, paddling underneath. The illusion of calm.
Yeah.
But thank you very much, all of you, for that,
Absolutely.
for that effort. And you too.
Yeah.
Thank you for your work
Thank
and
you, Erin.
guidance.
Thank you.
Well done.
All right, I believe we have one more interesting. I'm really interested to hear about Dow Junction.
Do tell me.
So as a member of the flock of ducks, Elliot Boyd, Assistant Director for Sustainability and Working Lands. I can still say good morning. I am here this morning to update you on a project that many of you have heard a lot about, and for new commissioners who have some familiarity with, but I'm going to go into a little bit of history on the project because this is kind of a good point to sort of revisit where we've been and also talk about where we're planning to go and to maybe get some input from all of you on maybe ideas of how we get there. So this is to that point about where we're going, you know, just part of this is just to really confirm that there's a commitment here. The board has made and staff is working to execute to produce community housing, affordable workforce housing in the Eagle River Valley area, which is so important to that community, to the entire state, to us as a board. This came up yesterday that's a newer topic for this board to really engage with in terms of affordable housing and housing crisis, and how that relates to what the fiduciary duty is that you all have. But it's something that we're engaged in, and we think that there are definitely ways that we can participate in helping to you know, help these communities. So as a reminder, the State Land Board has made about $1 million commitment so far on this project, trying to move it forward for planning, engineering, survey, other professional services. That's come out of the Investment and Development Fund because we believe that it really does contribute to the benefit of the property. And so we are committed and we are moving forward, but it's a complex process. So I'll summarize that a little bit for you. For folks who aren't familiar with this particular property, this is a map of the Eagle River Valley. Blue in the center of the map there is a section. It's an original school section. It's a section 16. So, you know, had its in statehood. It happens to be in a really amazing location when you look at it. We are within the planning areas for Vail, Minturn, and Avon. We're in Eagle County here. I-70 runs right through the middle of it. Highway 6 runs right through the middle of it. And in fact, the Eagle River runs through it. So we do have a river runs through it in this particular situation. And just as a highlight there, for the last few seasons, we've been leasing out a portion of the land, or we've been giving a temporary access permit to the Eagle County Open Space to use for access to the river in this location, because there's an area where you can get kayaks and small personal boats in. And it's been hugely valued by that community, because another location slightly upriver is not available anymore. And this is a community that really cares about recreation, and particularly that kind of recreation. So we're working and finding ways to engage with the community on all levels, even as we're moving towards much bigger goals in these ways. So just to let you know, we're trying to work with the community as many ways as we possibly can. This is a view sort of looking back to the east. On the right hand of the slide to the south is the Home State Peak School. It's in the Eagle County School District. It's on a portion of that school section. It's been there for a while. And on the left, you see that there's a string of development along there. Some of it more in the distances on our property, and really that's the development that's been on the property to date. It's a commercial industrial uses. They're actually really important to the community as well. They provide very much needed services in these mountain valleys, and they provide about $750,000 a year in revenue for the beneficiaries. So the property is producing and is doing well, and it could do more, and we look forward to that. In 1962, the board issued a right-of-way to CDOT for a maintenance facility. It's critical to transportation on in these roadways. As we all know, as we drive through the mountains, having CDOT have access to transportation infrastructure and being able to care for our roadways is really important. So absolutely important facility. But the decision at that time was to place it between I-70 and the river on what is really prime real estate. So that's something that we're working through as well as part of this process. In 2023, the board signed a memorandum of understanding, or an MOU, with the county and neighboring municipalities and metro districts, committing to affordable housing in this area. So we have that in writing. That's the thing that we've been working towards. Senate Bill 23001 was passed and signed by the General Assembly, or passed by the General Assembly, signed by the governor. Very important bill, did a number of things, but for us, what it did is it helped to relocate from a portion of the right-of-way some housing that had been built by CDOT without approval. And so it sort of cleared up an issue that had happened there, and CDOT was willing to release a portion of land that is tract G. It's the red blob to the north of Highway 6 on this map here. So that was a very big opportunity for us to really have sort of a piece of land that is available to move forward with the development. So fundamental, essential legislation that was passed that helped us and helped the partners. So staff got to work right away on an annexation application to the town of Avon. Staff had considered in the past, do we develop in the county? We are within planning areas of 3 municipalities. The decision was, one, if you're putting dense development, which affordable housing really wants to be, it should be in a municipality because of the way that services work. And the MOU group, together with the state land board staff, determined that Avon made the most sense in terms of the municipality that would be the entity that we would annex into. So we move forward on that basis. This is the zoning plan that staff consultants worked on to meet the community need. And in particular, the Avon had redone their zoning specifically to create community housing zoning. And so you can see, if you can't quite read on there, but on your packet, you can see that these are all community housing zoning districts that were specially created for the town. But really, this was one of the first uses for that. So we've been working in close parallel, trying to figure out what's the tool that would get us to that. This particular plan has the capacity to build out 700 affordable housing units and 60,000 square feet of commercial space. There's a zoning district in there that's CHMD, community housing mixed use development. So the idea is the commercial would be like a ground floor on a multi-story affordable housing residential building. So fairly progressive, innovative planning ideas here. Excited about the potential of what this is. So we've been working, we also have been working diligently. In addition with the town, we conducted an RFQ, RFP process, which some of you may remember, where we selected a developer as a partner on this, and Quorum Real Estate Group was selected as the developer that would actually be to construct the buildings. But it also was determined that the only way to finance affordable housing like this is really you have to have a housing authority, a public sector entity that would issue bonds and so forth. And so the plan is for Avon to be the developer, to develop the property, own it, and operate the building. Quorum's role is, as the fee developer, is to do the financing, figure out all the planning, do the construction and so forth. They're doing that same role right now with a project in Vail that's under construction. We're helping to contribute to the greater effort because this site in red is where they needed a laydown area to be able to build that affordable housing project in Vail. And for cost effective and to try to make that project happen, they came to us because they already knew us and said, hey, can we do laydown of materials here to make that project more affordable and to move faster? So we're trying to figure out up and down the river valley, how do you do these things? And so we're already participating in the process. Really what we would like to do is build buildings on this site. So that's the plan. June of last year, we had a meeting with all of the key stakeholders, including members of the legislature who are very involved in trying to make this happen, to figure out, how could we make this move forward faster. Decision was made to, instead of doing the 93 acres, which was the last plan that I showed you, we would focus on what can we do right now, which is that site in red. It's a 2.9 acre pad that's ready to develop. It's got utilities there, it's flat, it's open, it's there. And so the thought is let's do a smaller annexation, which is this 35 acre parcel. And the reason it's that big is because you have to touch the town boundary and you have to do certain things to be able to annex. But this is the piece that we said, we know we can move forward now on this, let's go. So in June of last year, we made that decision. And we said that the plan, the most efficient plan from our perspective was to do a ground lease on that. So Avon is the developer, Quorum is the sort of fee, manager of it, and then we're the owner and we have a ground lease on the property. I will say that there has also been discussions in the past of should we sell the land, and Avon has expressed a strong interest in wanting to acquire that entire 93 acre area that could have the 700 units on it. As part of their long-range planning for the town, they would like to own that land and do all of the development on their own. That requires, if we did a directed transfer, that would require an appraisal that the board agrees represents the full value of the land, so that the beneficiaries are compensated for, the value of the property going forward. There was an appraisal done in 2023 that now has expired because those only have a 2-year life. There were a number of issues with it. Neither the town nor the staff, felt like it properly represented the value of the land. And so another appraisal was commissioned. State Land Board commissioned it, but we did it in partnership with Avon, where together we selected who the appraiser would be. We reviewed what the criteria were. We got the appraisal back. Avon didn't agree with the final value of it. And so that process stalled out at that point, which is where we decided to sort of say, let's at least move forward on a ground lease for this land, because that seems like something we could really do now. And that's what we've been pushing for. Last November, as staff was uploading the final documents required for annexation, ready to go, we were informed by the town that they have not been able to secure the financing to build a project. The gap in financing is about $16 to $23 million. It's a significant amount of money. there are ways to fill that through bond, there's lots of different ways of financing affordable housing. We've been working very closely with Quorum. Quorum has been working very closely with Avon, really without being under contract to anybody, but because they were selected by us as the candidate. They know this valley really well. They know the people involved, and they're good at doing this. We've all been trying to utilize that resource to say, how could we figure this out? To date, we have not figured out a way to fill that gap. And so we're still working towards that, but it means that we're on hold right now for moving forward with this. So on the appraisal front also, we do understand that the town is seeking a third appraisal and is going back out to get numbers. We haven't seen that yet. We've been told it's imminent, it's coming soon. When we do get that, we anticipate getting it, and we anticipate maybe getting an offer to purchase again. We will bring that information and all the previous information back to the board, and we will do that in an executive session, which is how we handle real estate transaction deals. And we'll talk through all the values, talk through all the pros and cons of it. But we will get you that information when it comes to us. So, but in summary, I just wanted to say a couple of things about, where do we go from here, and get some feedback from all of you. First, I'd like to say that this section of land, it's very well positioned. This is a remarkable piece of land in terms of value growth potential. If you're looking at your portfolio and think of your assets, this is a good piece of land to own. So that's something that the board will need to consider. And in the past, the board has always considered disposal of land like this to only do it if really you get a premium on it. So that will be something that will have to be considered. But ground lease is also a very viable way of moving forward with this. We've done it at 13th and Sherman. We're doing it at 9th and Grant. We know that there's a model that can work there. And frankly, we've been told in the marketplace that the land board is able to enter into ground leases in more creative ways than your classic, private developer or landowner entity. And so staff believes that that is actually a place where the land board can actually make a difference, is by being the landowner and engaging ways that create models for how you finance over time a project that make sure that we get reasonable, consistent revenue, but also meets with the format of what is possible. So just to say that we believe that the ground lease is a very viable way of moving forward. And then the last one is that really what the challenge is here, the problem is funding the project, right? $16 to $23 million to build the building. That's the thing that is the nut that we need to crack. And so that's what we as staff are focused on. We've met with CHAFA, we've met with other entities trying to figure out the public-private partnership office of the government, state government has been having great success in finding underutilized state properties and developing them for affordable housing and other kinds of community positive developments. We're looking for partners and for advice and for input on how do you tackle a challenge like this. So with that, that's what I have for my presentation, but would be very interested. Juan, do you have any questions for me about where we are and how we got here? And really thoughts about as we move forward and try to figure out how to work with our partners to get this done. Are there things that we're not thinking of? Are there, advice that you might have for us?
With the ground lease, how many units were they envisioning putting on?
Yeah, good question. So for this tract A, the red on that plan, that could be about 100 units for this particular project, which is significant. The AMI is something that's still a little bit under conversation, probably averaging about 100% AMI, which for this valley is
it's always a
still
challenge.
very affordable.
It's a challenge.
And that's part of what the range between 16 and 23 is. It kind of depends on what the price, the rent rate is of what the cost is and what you have to finance. This also opens us up to this middle income tax credit. A lot of what you hear with affordable housing is a low income tax credit. In the mountain valleys, there's a lot of focus on these. There's some new tools that are out there for financing what is considered middle income, although when you compare it to what, people have to pay for housing around it, it's different than other places. So we're exploring all those options. But good question.
Could you ground lease the whole 93 acres?
We could. One of the questions that was raised in the past, so between Highway 6 and the river, that sort of strip of land there, that's going to be attached, 3-story probably, denser. Certainly initially, we're thinking rental, affordable housing.
Yeah.
On the other side of the river, the density would be lower, in part because of fire safety regulations in terms of how many new units you can have and be able to serve them and so forth. There's also a desire to have, I don't know if you do single family detached, but you could do duplexes, maybe triplexes, and so you get a lower density. And there's also a strong desire for sale affordable housing. We have not done, the model that we have right now for ground lease has been rental units, like here. That's a very easy model. We know exactly how to do that. It's a little bit trickier to do a for sale product on a ground lease, but it can be done. And we have been exploring that as well.
You do it in Hawaii.
Yeah.
It's fee simple or.
Yeah. It's definitely done. Community land trusts are another thing that happen around the country. So it has been done. So we're very interested in that as a model because again, it allows us to get, reasonable consistent revenue, and it doesn't add to the cost of the project by making the development entity, the town, buy the land, which just jacks up the price of the project.
I was just trying to think creatively if
Yeah.
that becomes a roadblock.
Yep. It's a possibility.
Which
It
actually
would be a later phase, but
surprising to me again that there's not the money to build it. So it's just surprising that Avon is trying to figure out how to buy the land when it can't finance the development anyway. Is there something driving? They want full control. I mean, even though it's not maybe economically as productive, but what's going on there? It seems like a disconnect.
yeah.
Are they really searching for the funding to do the development or?
They absolutely, they're searching for the money to do the development. They very much would like to do that. They also have been moving forward in the community on land that they own to do community housing. So I think, and I will not go much farther because I don't want to speak for the council or the town at all, but I can see that they are moving forward on land that they own, that they control, and then they're putting community housing on it. So, I guess I'll leave it at that if they come with an offer, I will ask them to please, articulate why that model is preferable to a ground lease model so that the board can consider what the pros and cons of that would be.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
there's some questions. I'm a bit confused, but if that's not an abnormal state for me. Do they, you've spoken both of a long-term ground lease to the city, but also the concept that they want to own the land. Have they expressed a preference for either purchasing the land versus leasing the land, or are they agnostic?
They certainly have asked several times and made proposals in several ways to purchase all of the land. So clearly it's an interest of the town to own the land. We got to this point because we couldn't come to an agreement on the price for the land. And in that June meeting, the town and all of us agreed this is a perfectly viable way to move forward on a ground lease. And so
we haven't expressed, we being the land board, haven't expressed preference for a long-term ground lease. Is that correct?
So far, that's certainly, I'll speak in this particular case, I'll speak for myself. And for this particular piece of ground for, moving forward now, I think this is the best idea. I think absolutely the board should consider selling the land. When it comes time, I will advise, and I advised when it came time before that, it shouldn't be sold at a discount because of all the qualities that I mentioned before.
Right. Does the legislation, I think it was legislation that that's involved here, or the law. It's no longer legislation, it's law.
Yeah.
Does it require us to give any discount or provide any discount off of our normal expectation of highest possible return in order to facilitate affordable housing?
Excellent question. I don't remember the details of the law, and I look at Ed to see if he remembers. What I remember specifically about it is it included a number of things, some of which related to us, some of which related to other initiatives that were happening. In particular, it was important for us because in order to secure and free up that piece of land, which meant taking it out of the right of way that we had with CDOT, the people that were the CDOT teams that were living on the property needed to be relocated. And so money was set aside by the legislature to help CDOT relocate their staff. I don't remember if there was language specifically directing us for the next steps of it, but I will look into it and I'll get back to you.
There is. In the document here, it says the board selected quorum. Does that refer to us or to the SLB?
Yes, there was
quorum.
There was a presentation to the board at the end of the RFP process presenting the qualities of the.
Were there other developers competing for it or
Yes.
responded?
It was an RFP process.
Okay. And so you're confident that this is the best partner going forward?
Yes, and we reviewed, there were qualifications, and then from the qualifications, we narrowed to a smaller group of 3 developers, and then we asked them for more formal proposals, and out of them, we selected. We also included Vail and Avon in Eagle County in the review process, asked their feedback of who they thought was the best candidate, collected all the information, brought it to the board, and the decision was that quorum was a very good partner for this.
And in this kind of situation, what is the role and responsibility of the developer in helping to figure out the financing, how to fill this $16 to $20 million gap?
Yeah. Excellent question. So in this case, the developer or quorum would be a for fee developer, right? They're not putting equity into it because of the nature of an affordable housing project, and that the to date typically that's done through bonds that are issued there, by municipalities and other entities like that. So it would be the public sector entity, which in this case we believe would be Avon, although it could be other housing authorities, it could be other public sector entities. Vail's doing it slightly differently with their projects. They would be responsible for actually securing the financing and figuring out. Quorum is serving a very important role right now as an advisor to both us and to Avon, without actually having a formal contractual agreement. They're doing it because they would like to move forward and be a project on it, but they're the ones who know the markets, they know the bond folks, they know the different tools that can be used.
Does Eagle County have a housing authority?
They do, yes.
Are they involved in the project?
They are a partner. They're one of the MOU partners, and they've been very helpful in advising us on it. To date, the decision has been that it made more sense for Avon to step into that role instead of Eagle County Housing Authority. I'd have to double check on all the rationale for it. There were a few reasons why developing in the county didn't make as much sense. One was what I said about the service and so forth. Although there is the Eagle Vale Metro District there that potentially could provide water and sewer service. The other thing is that Eagle County's zoning and the way that they look at development doesn't have the same kind of tax incentives and waivers for fees and things. Avon is very sophisticated in terms of all of the ways in which they try to incentivize community housing. The county doesn't have all the tools that would help reduce the cost of the project. So we believe the project would cost more if we did it within the county. And so that's part of the reason that the group decided that doing it in the city was better.
Avon has tons of experience.
Yeah.
With this.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Christine, what'd you say?
Avon has tons of experience with affordable housing and community housing. Like decades.
Yeah.
They're really, really a model.
Yeah.
So if anyone can figure it out, they're probably the right entity to do so.
Yeah.
How far apart were you with their offer or our offer and their bid on the purchase?
We were apart. My preference would be for talking about valuation and in terms of a deal is to do that later with you in an
Okay.
executive session as part of a real estate transaction conversation, just because, for all the reasons that we do those in executive session. So
What's the biggest labor shortage in that valley? Is it mostly ski oriented or is it nurses and police?
It's everything. It's the same as Summit County and probably Pitkin. It's everything, it's a housing issue.
Yeah.
You can't, it's everything from tourist oriented retail shops to restaurants to,
Medical,
teachers,
doctors,
doctors.
Healthcare
It's
professionals.
absolutely
it really
everything.
is, everyone.
Surprised Vale Associates doesn't finance this thing.
No, Vail supplies their own housing and,
But they
it's a-
still, I bet they need a lot of people that they don't house.
They do, yeah, well,
We,
we can talk about that over a glass of wine.
we did present to the Chamber of Commerce when we were doing this, and Vail expressed interest in a master lease, maybe. The Highway Patrol expressed interest in a master lease. There are a lot of entities that, whether they are the ones that actually invest in building the project, or they say, yeah, absolutely, if you've got units.
Then
those
maybe,
prices-
then maybe
so
we'll do something.
We know there's a demand.
But hardly ever will they
Yeah.
upfront. Put
Um,
money in.
Sorry, another answer to your question is that last year, so 2025, Eagle County updated their housing needs assessment. And so there is a fresh off, an updated version of like, what do they need? What are the numbers? Who do they need it for? All of those kinds of things. So I can, maybe we can put that in a board packet coming up.
What do municipal bonds like this typically pay in terms of interest return?
Excellent question. I don't want to answer it off the top of my head, but yeah.
Pretty low.
What's that?
It's pretty low, is it?
Yeah, they're not huge, but people are, they're selling. Those bonds do sell. It's not a problem of selling the bonds. It's
And I'm sure this is
finding the backing for
sure
it.
this is impossible, but maybe we could put our own money into it. Get a return on our money and get the thing done.
There have been models that have been presented to us that look like that as well.
I want to follow up on that, explore that. Is that feasible notion? I like.
No,
I'm
if we
intrigued
got
by
5%.
I'm
on our
intrigued by it.
investor or whatever the fund we were just talking about.
Program fund?
No, the
Oh, investment development.
yeah, IND. If we got 5% instead of our 0.8% financing this thing.
Yeah.
I doubt it would probably take about 3 acts in the legislature to do it, but
I think there are statutory restrictions on how we use money and issuing bonds and things like that, but I don't know that I don't want to put you on the spot, Ed, but I know that it's not, that there's details behind it.
Issuing bonds is a very tricky thing, and the IND fund has some limitations both in the depth of the pool.
yeah.
But creative thinking is helpful
Yeah.
in this. So
Look at those.
All right, so
we can
is it,
look at all those.
so, all right, so the NSE funds,
Mhm.
I believe we can invest in any property right, correct? We've got X amount of sitting in NSE dollars that have to be spent within that 2-year window. We have the potential, should the the transaction on Lahara complete on schedule, of having a lot of money sitting there very quickly to be invested in a very short period of time. Is that at all investing in a project of this nature with the proper or appropriate return, appropriate market return? Is that something we should explore?
It's an excellent question. I can't think of a situation where we've invested funds like that in a vertical improvement, but I'm happy to research it and figure out if
I
that's.
mean, but this board has in the past invested in both commercial real estate, right? And in apartment,
Yeah.
residential real estate.
We did, sorry, yes, office, so the commercial part, you're absolutely right. I don't think we've ever purchased residential. The 13th and Sherman is a ground lease. And so we didn't put money into the building on that
Right.
one.
Right.
But
But office,
certainly office.
Yeah, well, so
Yes.
I think, that's a wild idea, but we ought to look into this a little bit.
Of course, we want to spend all that Lahara money on another nice piece of property.
Yeah, well, the building would be beautiful.
Assistant
Yeah, I
Director
mean, I
Roseman?
don't want to lose the opportunity to invest in
Yeah.
what we call a
Yeah.
crown jewel.
Right.
But, we ought to explore this a little bit.
Yeah. Yes.
We commend Mr. Harvey for the idea.
Commissioner Purple, I think the closest thing we've done to that is this building we're in right now.
Mm.
Where we owned the land and we couldn't pay for the construction of the building, but we could hire a contractor and give them a ground lease on the land. And then they had a put option to put the building to us once it received a certificate of occupancy at a particular price. And so we bought it with SE funds.
Why couldn't we pay for the building back whenever we did this?
I don't know the answer to that, but I think it was due to the nature of IND funds that
Nature of what?
of IND funds. I
Oh,
don't think we could buy
IND.
construction materials, but we could buy.
But I'm talking about
Fixed
NSC
funds.
funds, not
Yeah, I'm
IND.
sorry, NSC funds is what I meant. Yeah.
We will dig into it, get you a better answer than we have today. But
Thank you.
appreciate the creative thinking. That's exactly what I'm looking for.
it doesn't mean we have to do the whole thing, then maybe some.
Partner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's a gap, right? We're not
Yeah.
talking, it's,
It's a big.
But I mean, Eagle County, by the way, it's gotta be, Christine would know this far better than I, but one of the top 5 wealthiest counties in the state, right, in terms of real estate valuations?
They are a wealthy county, generally, but they have their own, they also have challenges. They have challenges with their demographics, for sure. It's not all highfalutin. Their school system is a little taxed and, yeah, they have their own challenges.
Director Roseman?
Thank you, Chair. I really appreciate the creative ideas because it gets to the heart of the matter, which is we are committed to seeing successful affordable housing created on this property. And the preferred approach right now was really a response to the process taking so long. We came up with, let's do a ground lease. Let's do phase 1. It'll have 100 units with the future build out being 700 units, but let's keep going now. So we're continuing to work with these partners to really see how we can make this happen. So your funding ideas were really helpful and we'll think about them and give you updates in the future. We're hoping to meet with the partners soon so that we can really, help be a part of that successful outcome. So I really appreciate where the board was going because it's along those same lines. We all want the same thing here and think we need to navigate some obstacles and figure out the best path to get there. So thank you.
One quick question that isn't on the agenda, any updates on 9th and Grant? I know we had a round, we selected somebody and it didn't work.
I'd like to phone a friend.
Yeah, I'll just, Julie Majors, I just want you to know that we are in constant contact with Gorman. And my last conversation with Kimball was that they're gonna go back to the drawing board and try to figure out a program that will work for another round of applications to CHFA.
Okay, that's right, because they've been left out.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. Now I'm remembering what the hang up was.
Yeah. So they'll probably come to us and talk to us about what they want to do. And then we'll come to the board and say, this is how the program's going to change. Are we all okay?
Got it. Thank you.
Very good. And I'm gonna correct myself. I think in Hawaii, there are leasehold properties and they're held by a trust.
Okay,
Often Native Hawaiians.
Yeah.
have A trust and they have leases.
yeah, no, Hawaii's got some very interesting.
They are
and-
interesting. It's the first time I've.
Side fits.
Yeah. Now we're talking at site visits, which is.
I'm happy
Understand that kind of
do some preliminary work, make sure it's all.
Yeah, she's right.
And Elliot, there's that project in Grand County, in Grand County that's ground lease. I believe the Granby owns the land and the homes are
Right.
affordable homes.
Yep.
I forget, Sun City or it's
Yep.
not Sun City.
Yep.
But anyway, so that's another example,
Mhm.
kind of mixed
Yeah.
results so far, but in some.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
The last little bit here is commissioner topics. Hadn't gotten any emails from anybody. Nicole, had you? Do you have any topics? Then I'll just throw in that we're working to advance this asset allocation process and have I've been working with staff on an RFP, which we hope will go out there soon. So we'll maybe by March, we'll have an update on kind of where we're going and what it looks like and where we are. I'm 50 celebration. We're probably one of the few that's been around.
Yeah, for the 150th birthday of Colorado, we're one of the few organizations.
That have actually we're coincident with state.
Yeah.
To do some, and so.
We need a
Emily-
party. Is that what you're saying?
But I don't think it can be in Hawaii. I think we'd have to have.
Yeah.
Hello, Commissioners. Emily Barbo. I'm your Public Information Officer. There is a collaborative effort across state agencies to plan quite a few events and opportunities to celebrate and do some storytelling in collaboration with the America 250 campaign, as well as just Colorado's statehood celebration. We've got a few ideas bouncing around for the state land board in particular. I've been reaching out to Colorado Department of Education in particular to see if there are opportunities around stories around schools and school children and how we can kind of document our history and our impact over the last 150 years. And I've been thinking about a design for a very beautiful cake. So I do think there'll be several opportunities for us as a staff and us as a board to celebrate throughout the year. Especially in July and August is when most of the celebratory events are culminating. There is an app that you can download for, I forget the name of it, but I'll get the details and I can send it around, that lists all of the different agencies' initiatives throughout the year. There's also a passport scavenger hunt. So you can go to different museums and cultural locations around the state and collect them in your digital passport to chronicle our incredible history. So it's definitely something that's on my radar, and I will be sure to provide a more detailed update soon. Yes.
I wonder if, in the last 25 years or something of buildings that the land board has funded, new buildings, if you could find outstanding graduates of those schools and parade them around, whether they became doctors or lawyers or, whatever. And, highlight them as a front.
You should continue to focus on outstanding.
But highlight them as the product of the state land board.
That's a great idea.
Well, thank everybody for a productive meeting. And I believe we're adjourned.
Wow.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Relative. Welcome.